like creation is the ultimate motivator, I think. And how do we get people to want to create more? What do you think it is?
In my companies, in my projects, in my investments, in all of the stuff, I know what it takes, right? I know what it took out of me. It comes down to a lot of times just brute force and effort and grit and just a lot of hard work. I didn't want to just continue analyzing other people's business, right? I have more interest on the side of building things. You have to be hopeful, right? You have to believe that you can convince people to buy what you're selling. You have to believe that people are going to care about your why.
I'm Jarie Bolander, and welcome to the Entrepreneur Ethos Podcast. This podcast is all about how to build a more ethical, inclusive, and resilient world through educating and inspiring the next generation of entrepreneur through powerful storytelling. Let's get started. Mark Smokler, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, it's my pleasure. You are a referral from our good friend, Sean Gold, who I think holds the record for the number of people he's introduced me to when it comes to the show. And you have done a lot of stuff, which blows my mind because you are clearly someone along the same lines as I, who has so many different interests and so much entrepreneurial knowledge. And there's just this whole spectrum of things we could probably spend days talking about. But before we kind of dive into that, like I always like to say, tell us how you got to do what you're doing today, and then we'll go kind of zig and zag along that route.
Yeah. Look, I sort of, we don't really plan these things, right? It sort of happens that you fall into things, right? And when I came out of school, business school from Minnesota, I was an investment banker, and I spent a few years in the Twin Cities and a few years on Wall Street. And as an investment banker, you're analyzing other businesses, right? And you're diving deep into other people's work. And I pretty quickly realized that I didn't want to just continue analyzing other people's business, right? I have more interest on the side of building things, so to speak. So, I mean, I think that's really just the crux of it, of just being an investment banker, looking at other people's businesses, trying to get a sense of if it's good or bad, and ranking it. And it just, I don't know, it felt wrong to me, right? It felt like I just wanted to be on the other side of building them. And for better or for worse, I had opinions on building it better, right, so to speak. But since then, now call it 20 plus years on, right? I definitely now at this point just really love building stuff. Call it the chess game of business, of figuring out the puzzle, bringing things to market, getting people interested in the things that you bring to market. And just the journey of that is sort of my jam. Love it.
Cool. Yeah. Wow. Because I was looking at your website, phoenix.co, which we talked a little bit about before we got on the phone. And there is a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 5x7 matrix, 5x8 matrix of all the things that you've been involved with and you invested in and stuff like that, which I just find so inspiring in one sense, because like so many entrepreneurs, our minds just we just get it in the groove, and we're like, God, I would love to help everybody. How do you sort of pick what you work on? I mean, clearly you can't work on everything, but I mean, what are some of the criteria, and sort of take us through the process of, investment banker analyzing things. And now when I want to get involved with something, how do you go about that?
Yeah, look, it's changed over time, definitely, right? When the first company, which was the main one, which was Finality, which I got pulled into in 2004 by a friend of mine who had a previous success, you can be less choosy, right? Because you don't have a lot to bring to the table other than just RPMs, if you will, right? But as I've sort of progressed through it, and seen a lot of successes and of course a lot of failures, you get to recognize pretty quickly what you want to do, what you like to do, and people you like to work with, right? And you have a type, right? You have a theme.
Yep.
And with success, you can also get to be more choosy as well, because you just get more options, more optionality. And so now at this point in my career, I'm really focused on things that I love, I believe in, with people that I genuinely enjoy spending time with or learning from or working with, if you will. And as long as it meets like that and a few other criteria, right? I'm happy to sort of jump in and see what's going on and see what the opportunity is. I love working at this point, right? It's easy for me to say that because I'm doing projects that I enjoy, right? I have definitely been in scenarios where I hate the company or I hate the tech or it's failing or like it's hard to wake up and go to work. Like I've definitely been there, right? And what I'll say is in those moments, you definitely look forward to the weekend and the break. Right now, I look forward to Mondays, right? And again, I love my weekends too. I look forward to continuing to work on projects that I believe in, right? And so I'm in that stage right now where I'm purposely looking for things that I want to do, really is what that looks like. And I'm marrying that with roles that I like to fulfill within companies and people that I enjoy working with. Right. And so it's easy for me to say like work is my anchor at this point. And, thankfully I have a great family that understands that. And as much as I can, sometimes I bring them on work trips with me. I talk about the projects, I engage them when I can so they can at least see that. And they definitely enjoy the benefits of the work, right? They're living a great life.
Yeah, for sure. For sure.
So, all of that works for me. Right. And it might not work for everybody. Right. But that's sort of, so for me. And so again, like I'm fortunate enough to be able to have a lot of optionality. I live in a great town. I live in Austin, Texas. That's got a lot of great things going on as it relates to my world of tech and entrepreneurship. And there's just a lot of great energy here too, and people doing a lot of things. So it's easy for me to fall into things, right?
Yeah. No, I mean, I think it's, as I've done my entrepreneur journey, which has been pretty much my whole career, better part of almost 25 years, it's kind of funny because you sort of surround yourself with the folks that charge you up and you sort of seek that out. And I think that's the reason why being in places like Austin and I'm in San Francisco, New York, like it's the intangible energy that just like, it's also the attitude of the people, like it's possible.
Yeah.
I mean, I remember back in the day when I was working for in the semiconductor industry, we had a design center in Austin. So I'd go there. This was back in the 90s, like late 90s. And Austin wasn't as Austin as it is today, but there was a vibe, right? There was a feeling. There was it's an unsense, like when you have in Silicon Valley, like when you go downtown, not now as much downtown San Francisco, but when it booms, right? You get the energy. And so I'm curious, you invest in a lot of companies, you get involved with a lot of companies. There's a lot of folks that listen to the show that are trying to raise money. They're trying to build like that vibe. Other than you're interested in it, kind of what are the things you look for? What is the vibe you look for in a company, either to invest in or to help out? Are there any like tangible things you look for? Or is it just like, I love that, I go?
Yeah. So there definitely needs to be matched energy, right? So I'm an energy guy, right? I put a lot of effort and a lot of myself into the projects, into the companies and ideas. And so if I'm looking across the table and somebody's presenting something to me or pitching me on something or trying to convince me to help them in some way, if it's very one-sided in terms of the excitement and energy, like I'm out, right? I'm not about to be somebody's serotonin. I'm not about to they can't pull for me. Like they can, but there's got to be some match. There's got to be some sense that they're all in, right? And like they're committed and they believe in it. I mean, that's where it starts, right? And if if I'm excited about it, that's fine. But again, like I have to rely on them because, what I'll say and what I've learned from myself is, there's got to be like excitement and energy, because you need to pull from that well, because times do get tough, right? You will suffer. You will bang your head up against the wall. You will be looking at, hey, tomorrow we're going to fail, right? If I don't raise, like,
Yeah.
there's so much
Yeah.
negative. There's so much failure around you, just incremental failures, if you will. So if you aren't like, if you don't have a deep well of excitement and energy and grit, so to speak, it's hard. And a lot of times now at this point, like I'm pulled into things, right? And so again, like I need to rely on them. And I have this thing where I call it like my 80-20 rule, where, man, I don't know if you saw that. I wrote about it on LinkedIn, but I've become like, I've focused my skill set, my energy around sort of being an exceptional operator, right? A 0 to X guy, right? And so, and I've done so many things, but I'm definitely not a subject matter expert on a number of these projects, to be clear, right? So for instance, even just on the sake business, the Japanese sake business, I don't know a lot about sake. I do now, and, but there are definitely people that are experts at it more than me, or on my AI project, or on skincare, whatever it might be. And people ask me like, how do you step through or learn all of these things? It's like, look, like I stick with what I know, which is the 80%, right? As I view it, right? I'm not saying that like I do, like my role is 80% of a company. I'm just saying like I focus on being and honing my skills on the 80% of what does it look like to scale an e-com business, or what does it look like to bring things to market, or what does it look like to maximize a target persona, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah.
Right. And then I rely on others to be that subject matter expert, right? The exceptional partners within ClearStep, right? They know a lot about skincare and the market, right? And that covers me, right? Or originally when we launched Saki Social, brought on the original, one of the first people that wrote about sake and launched the first store in the United States, which is True Sake in San Francisco on Hay Street, right? And so I paired up with him, and I have like a leading team with AI experts and like all of these things. Like I am not, right, but I bring other stuff, right? And so, coming back to your question, right, on the how a bit, if you will, right? It's recognizing what I'm good at and looking for in the person sitting across from me. Do they fulfill that subject matter expert? Are they that person, right? Will they help us pretty quickly get to what does best practice look like, or best in class look like for this product or this service or this X, right? So matching my ability to scale or to launch or to 0 to X a business with, we are that North Star for that product or service. Does that person across the table represent that? So again, it's energy, it's their knowledge, right? Are they at that top of that, right? Can I rely on them, right? If I get paired up, or if I get across a competitor, right? I need to know that the person that I'm paired up with can go toe to toe with them, so to speak. So it's those two things. It starts there. And then the third thing is like, I have to believe in it, right? Like it has to be something that I'm interested in, right? So whether it is biohacking at this point in my life, like trying to find the fountain of youth, which a lot of people at my age are looking for.
I'm 53. I get it, man.
So diving deep on all of that and all the things that have sort of opened up since COVID has been very interesting to me. A lot of new tech in medicine, from peptides and on. So that's a lot of my interest. Skincare and sort of the growth of men's elevated skincare has been very interesting to me. And so there's a huge opportunity. So I've been interested in men's health, wellness, and if you want to call it, not trying to be vain, but like just the products. So no longer are we just looking at super low end, cheesy, and I'm not trying to like knock it down or anything, but like Irish Spring soap, like all these
spice.
And so like there's a next level of stuff that have come out that like Dr. Swatch and all of these things that's very interesting to me. And so like I've done a lot of projects on that side, helping me be more productive. So looking at sort of all of the differences like CBD, CBD plus, all of that has been interesting to me. Obviously there's been a lot of growth in the real estate market in and around Texas. So I'm very interested in sort of looking at the opportunities within real estate and the ranch land and Texas Hill Country and all that stuff. So again, like if it's in my fairway or sweet spot of things that I'm interested in as well, like that's got to be something that I'm interested in. Otherwise, I can't really get into it. Right.
Yeah. It just sounds like you're really intellectually curious. Like there's a level of curiosity, which I think as entrepreneurs, I mean, I don't think you can teach that. I don't think so. I mean, being curious is maybe upbringing, maybe nature, maybe nurture. I'm not so sure. But I remember some of the projects I've worked on that were spectacular failures, and then the spectacular successes were that intellectual curiosity, like, oh, I wonder if we could do that. And your whole idea of 0 to X, which I call 0 to hero, like you're the 0 to hero guy. Like, hey, we come in from nothing and we scale it to something, and yay. Love that. I love that energy, like match the energy. Like that's such a good, I think it's just a general good rule. Cause I'm always trying to figure out, like, I get asked a lot to help people with their messaging and positioning and their storytelling, and how do I explain this complex thing? That's what I do at my day job over at Decision Council. And I'm always like fascinated why people come up with their idea. And I get a lot of young entrepreneurs asking me because they don't know, they're clueless. Like, we build the tech and yay, blah. Like, bro, no one cares about your stupid SaaS tool. Like, tell me a story, right? And they're like, oh, what do you mean? It's so cool. It's not like, no. No one cares. And once they realize that, then I think it's pretty interesting. So I can appreciate the intellectual curiosity, the match the energy, the do you believe, the belief thing. And is that, how did that come about? Was that how you were brought up? Were your parents entrepreneurs? What's the milieu? Like, what was the soup that kind of built you into who you are?
Yeah. God, that's a big question. No, my parents were entrepreneurs. My dad's a doctor, right? And so if anything, right, it's the very one and the more of a typical upbringing, if you will. And again, afforded tons of opportunities, obviously, to have that upbringing. But one part of that is work ethic. So my dad, worked his buns off, right? Crazy amounts of work and effort. And so I definitely saw that from him. And so there was a strong sense of you get what you put in, right? And his efforts afforded a lot, right? And gave us a lot of opportunity. And so definitely myself, my brother, and my sister set us up for success, right? And so definitely could appreciate that work ethic. So there's that component, right? You can't be an entrepreneur without the effort, hard work, right? So that's a big part of it, right? So willing to really brush your ass off constantly. And then again, I've just always been more appreciative of people that build things, that create things, that seemingly do things, right? And even when I'm hiring today for my various companies or projects, I always try to find the people that are execution heavy, or people that just go out and do stuff, try stuff, like throw mud at the wall, like something, right?
Versus, bias to action. I like bias to action. I always say I'm a ask for forgiveness kind of person. Like, if you're not around and I need to do stuff, I just do it. And if I screw up, I'm sorry, but like progress, make decisions, move. Yeah, totally.
And so like, it's just my personality, I guess. Like I've always just been sort of more of a doer, brute force, grit, type of individual. And that's just who I am, I guess. And so I rely on that. Like that's my superpower, is that I might not be the smartest person in the room, but I'm going to freaking brute force my way through it. And over time, you just train yourself and you have your tool set. And so now I can scale myself pretty well, and I know where I'm deficient. I know where I'm not. And I just push hard into it. And yeah, I mean, that's really what it is, I guess, coming from, again, what a strong work ethic is sort of where I always pull from. I can go on and on.
Yeah, I agree. But I can't think of an
there's the abundance mentality as well as a part of that. Like you have to be, like hopeful individual, right? Like like in entrepreneurs now, I mean, that's a double-edged sword, right? Again, hope is a dangerous drug, and hope has driven me down to more failure than I should have been and a bigger failure, right? Versus just calling a project like, okay, this clearly isn't working. Like nobody cares. Nobody's buying into it.
Nobody
Like,
gives a
call it a
shit.
day.
Yeah.
And
Hope
so,
springs eternal until the deadline passes, and you're like, "What just happened?"
one more deal, one more contract, and we're there. One more funding check. Oh my God. And so I've been in that cycle that's just been even worse failures than it should have been. But you have to be hopeful, right? You have to believe that like you can convince people to buy what you're selling. You have to believe that, stealing from Simon Sinek, that people are going to care about your why. And they're going to get behind you, and they're going to get some emotional connection to what you're trying to do or achieve. Right. And I mean, if you don't have hope, right, then you'll never jump, right? You'll never try.
Yeah. I mean, hope does spring eternal when you're trying to figure out like what the heck to do. And in the dark days, in storytelling, it's the dark night of the soul, which is something that I always reference. It's that point where it's the difference between continuing on and stopping. And the folks that I've seen that have had that hope, well, it's work ethic, it's luck, and it's hope. But more importantly, I think it's the combination of in the darkest day when no one's looking, internally, you're like, no, this is worth it to me. I believe in this. And for better or worse, I'm going to continue on until I can't continue on anymore. I think that trait in entrepreneurship is what a lot of people miss, because it's not, I think to your point, right? You don't have to be that bright. I mean, I'm not the brightest guy in the world. I went to state school, community college. Not like I'm like going to Ivy League or anything like that, but my dad is similar. He was an entrepreneur. He worked at United Airlines for 33 years or something like that. But his work ethic was just like, he would not only work his full-time job, and then he would coach us, and then he would like build his house. Like guy could not stand still. And I like to think of it as the blue collar work ethic. I don't know if that's something that resonates with you, but the reason I call it the blue collar work ethic is because it's get the hands dirty, like get it done. Like you have to sometimes do things you don't want to do. And I'm just curious if you found that as well with some of the companies you've worked with, like the ones you knew were going to make it or not make it, or again, you talk about matching the energy and work ethic, but was it that we will do anything it takes to get successful?
Sure. I mean, that's what it does take, right? Yeah. And it's fun. It's funny because it's become more relevant as I'm hiring people in different generations, right? There are just some people that that'll flat out, even in an interview, it's crazy to me, where they'll talk about how they don't want to work that hard, right? Or intimate that like, hey, like they're a 9-to-5 person. Or I even had somebody a few months ago tell me that, is it okay that they don't work on Fridays? Like they just want to work Monday through Thursday, and they love their Fridays. And in previous jobs, they basically taken off every Friday. And I don't even know how to respond to that.
That's a different attitude, that's for sure.
Yeah, I mean, it's different, and that's fine. Like I'm not trying to judge. And then of course, like there's the 4-hour work week with all those publications and stuff. Yeah. What I can tell you is, in my companies, in my projects, in my investments, in all of the stuff, like I know what it takes, right? I know what it took out of me. And yeah, it comes down to a lot of times just brute force and effort and grit and just a lot of hard work. And you get to a point where you embrace it, and you either enjoy it or you don't, right? And so yeah, like I'm very sensitive to it now, right? Even as we have like remote work, and again, the different generations and stuff, like in my interviews, I'm very clear up front what my expectations are. And I prefer to find people that aren't scared of putting in the effort and doing hard work. Now, if they don't, right? Again, I'm not trying to pass judgment on anybody. I'm just there are definitely easier jobs out there than being an entrepreneur, right? No doubt, right? There are 9-to-5 jobs that are clearly defined, that have very obvious swim lanes with a title that is declarative on what you're going to do day in and day out. And for that fits better for some people, and that's perfectly fine. But in my world, right, titles change and jobs change, and you're expected to turn up and down your effort with, you can't with zero expectation other than I hope my equity pays off at some point, right? I mean, that's the hope again coming back. So, so I do believe in the blue collar work ethic. It does mean something to me. It's not to say like the white collar, blue collar. I'm not trying to get into that battle or that game. Growing up in the Midwest, right, seeing the effort that was put in around me in the family, I do relate to that.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree with you. It's so interesting. I mean, I think it is a generational thing. I do know and work with the Z and now Alpha that's coming up, but mostly Z. And it's hard to put my finger on because as a Gen Xer, like we have a different attitude on the world. I mean, we grew up on neglect and hose water. Like nobody cared about us. We were go play and then come back and hopefully a serial killer won't kill you. Like at least in California where I grew up, where in the 80s, in 70s and 80s, there was like serial killers everywhere. It was the craziest thing. But yeah, I think that's the attitude I think that's changed. Cause I mean, even if you, and I think it has to do with, and I don't know if it's just because there's such despair, like Gen Z looks at the world and they're like, what do I do? I'm like kind of screwed. There's like nothing I can hold on to. I don't have I don't agree with this, but there's been talk like the American dream is dead. If I work hard, I don't know if I'm going to get ahead. And I've had all this student debt because I got sold a bill of goods that college was the way to go. And you can debate on that or whatever. I just think they don't have hope and inspiration. I think their thing, it seems, is we got screwed and we're just going to make sure we enjoy our lives, and work is not the end all be all. Although when you're young, I don't know what your thoughts on this. When you're young, I think you got to put the effort in to learn what you don't know. So you can get to the point where you can be a Mark and you can be like, I got 10 different things going on because I know what I'm doing.
Yeah. So look, I had this conversation recently, another group of people, but like, I still believe in the American dream, right? I'm living it. I feel it. Right. And there are still tons of opportunities in the US, and my kids have done a lot of traveling. They lived abroad for a year, 2 years ago. My wife and two boys just lived abroad and I would go back and forth. And so they experienced some different cultures. They went to a different school system, et cetera, outside of the United States. And I still think that in nowhere in the world is it easier to create something from scratch. In nowhere in the world is it easier to get still funding, right? I had a friend that was trying to do startups in England, right? And it's impossible to raise capital or to get something going. And like the attitude towards entrepreneurs is just very different. It's not supportive. It's the antithesis of that, right? Or, trying to create in France with all of their labor laws, or in the EU or whatever. I mean, it goes on and on and on. So I still think that this is a land of opportunity, very much so. And right now we're seeing a renaissance with AI and all of these new tool sets that are coming on to help us be more efficient, right? And even here now in Texas, like Elon Musk is moving all these companies here, and it's getting Austin excited. And there's like a mini renaissance within Austin, right? And so I see opportunity all around. And I see new ways of it interacting and engaging in the different cohorts of communities, if you will, right? So Gen Z, millennials, X, whatever, Alpha, now my boys. I see so much, right? Like my boys with COVID, they started doing Roblox, right? And now full on communities and engagement within an online, like persistent gaming arena. It was like so wild to me, right? And that opened up like this whole world of like Roblox and Roblox Studio, and my son's got a Minecraft server and all of these things. So again, I think all of these things are just like new opportunities and new ecosystems to build from and create from. And I think it's fascinating. And so but again, like I'm the abundant mentality guy, right? I'm the optimist. I'm the hopeful guy where I see that. And so again, like this is what I preach to my boys, right? Like there's a lot of like pain and suffering and hurt when wars and all that stuff going on around us. But from a long view, that's always been going on, right? There's always been strife and hate and all of that stuff. And so I tend not to look at it. I just, even like with the politics that are going up the day and all of that stuff, like it is what it is. It's always persistent. And I choose not to put my mind into it because like it's a black hole and it provides no value. And I just don't care about those things that I can't really seemingly control. I'd much rather, again, build stuff, do stuff, right? And so again, like that's where I choose.
Yeah. No. The creator. Yeah. Because see, I always think the entrepreneurs, we're the creatives of the business world. Like we're the ones that believe. We're the ones that drive the world forward in terms of innovation. For good or for bad, we've got our problems, don't get me wrong, but I agree with you. I think the opportunity has never been greater. And I think it's in things that people necessarily don't even pay attention to. So one of the things I've been looking into lately is what I call craft and commerce companies, which are basically either brick and mortar stores or professional services, things that are like you need and you interact with plumber, pool supply, whatever, roofer, etc., and all kind of basically consumer services, home services, whatever. And if you look at those industries and you look at those businesses, one, I wouldn't say they're 100% recession proof, but everyone needs when they need it, right? HVAC, whatever. But two, especially in coming from Silicon Valley, which is all about Silicon Valley tech, I think that there's a huge untapped opportunity to help those businesses not only take on technology and make them better and more innovative and et cetera, but you see a huge, massive shift, this mega trend of boomers are retiring and those businesses are not going anywhere. They're like either the kids either don't want them or no one's there to pick them up, even though the opportunity is massive. So vertical SaaS is sort of the other thing that people call this. And Cody Sanchez, Boring Businesses, right? I think she's out of Austin too. It's huge opportunity. Like, I don't think you need to go to college anymore to be successful. I think you just gotta find your lane. And I struggle sometimes to try to communicate that, but I love the way you phrased it, is build, like create. Creation is the ultimate motivator, I think. And I just, how do we get people to want to create more? What do you think it is?
I think it's a number of things, right? I think even coming to taking home services as an example, right? I think sometimes it takes really just lining it up and making it so obvious and so easy and so efficient for people to easily just fall into, right? And so we're seeing things like these lead gen services like Thumbtack that making it super easy for people to become a plumber, right? So I think that as markets become more efficient, and obviously now there was like a funny South Park episode recently about like how much you have to pay for a plumber now and all these home services and like they're charging whatever because nobody are in these services anymore. Everybody just thinks that there's opportunity elsewhere. But I think just efficient capital markets, like there'll be some balance. But I think, again, taking a lot of this new tech that's helped. And there was a company even in Austin that was building a lead gen service for pool cleaning, right? And pool services, right? So again, it's making these markets more efficient, delivering leads and aggregating them and making it easier for people that have homes to get access to these people. Also finding who are the better reviewed people out there. And then those people charge more. And again, I think that'll just draw people's attention. Like, how much do you charge an hour for doing electrical work? 200 an hour? Holy cow. Right. And so I think that there's going to be just that natural tendency. And with tech, we'll get things more efficient, more effective, and they'll charge more. And I think that'll draw more people just over time. Do a lot of alpha Gen Alpha people are they interested in home services types businesses? No, but they're going to have to find their way, and they'll have to find ways to provide and make money, and they'll see how much money they're making, and the word will get out. And before you know it, they'll fall into it.
100%. Well, hey, Mark, appreciate your time. This has just been so fascinating. I just love your attitude. I love what you're doing. Thanks, Sean, again for the intro. Good luck, man. Stay in touch and stay safe.
Yeah, my pleasure. Pleasure to get to know you too.
Thanks for listening to the Entrepreneur Ethos Podcast. I hope you enjoyed this episode as much as I did creating it. My hope is that you learned something that can make you a little bit better. If you enjoyed the podcast, please do share it with friends and review it on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. You can also join my email list by visiting theentrepreneurethos.com to get my thoughts on what I'm doing to get better, as well as what I'm working on. You can also pick up my book, The Entrepreneur Ethos, if you want to learn the traits, values, and beliefs that I think we need to build a more ethical, inclusive, and resilient entrepreneur and, frankly, world community. Feel free to follow me on Twitter @TheDailyMBA and let me know if you have any questions or recommendations for a guest you'd like me to talk to. Also, drop me a note if you try anything we talked about on this or any other episode. I'd love to hear what's working for you. Until next time, keep getting better.